Good morning and welcome to the PROTEOME Sciences PLC investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time by the Q&A tab situated in the right-hand corner of your screen. Just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll. I'd now like to hand you over to Dr. Mariola Songen, CEO. Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to PROTEOME Sciences presentation of the final results for the year ending December 31st, 2022. My name is Mariola Songen and I'm the CEO of the company. I cannot spare you the disclaimer. It is basically informing you about forward-looking statements in our presentation, and all contents is provided for information purposes only. So, who we are. We are a leading contract research organization. We provide services around the proteomics technology. So what we basically do is we identify, validate, and apply these methods for the detection of protein biomarkers. Basically, our business consists of two arms. One is the tandem mass tech business, and the other one is the service business. Now, let's start with the tandem mass techs. Tandem mass techs are chemical substances that are needed to label, so to detect proteins by mass spectrometry methods. This technology has been invented and is owned by PROTEOME Sciences, and it's under an exclusive distribution agreement with our partner, Thermo Scientific. So with regard to our customers, it's mainly pharmaceutical and biotech companies, but we are also providing services for example, academic research. Now, with regards to services, we also apply this TMT in our service offerings, and our services are mainly mass spectrometry-based proteomics. So what our customers actually are seeking is to expand their biological knowledge beyond genomics. A gene is always coding for quite a number of proteins, and once these proteins are around, they can still be changed by the cells into quite a number of subtypes of proteins, which all have different functions in the body. And it's very important to know which subtype, for example, of this protein is just around. So that's an answer that genomics cannot give you, but with proteomics and our specific methods, we can provide these answers. So with regard to our customers in our cooperation, we are fully aligned with the drug development process. This is where proteomics has its main really role in drug development processes. So, for example, in the support of clinical trials, but also when developing in vitro diagnostics. And you can imagine that when applying proteomics methods, we really produce tons of data. And basically, our customers would not be able to process these data. So we are doing this for them. This is also one of our offerings, and we are doing this with our proprietary bioinformatics methods. On top of these two business areas, we, of course, retain our science-led business focus. That means that with regard to services, also with regard to the reagents, we are looking into new offerings. So on the service area, for example, single-cell proteomics is something that is very high on our agenda and will come through this year. I will describe this later. But we are also developing new reagents to expand the existing reagent range. The key components, this means what really makes us special. We are an established business for decades with a good brand name, and we are, unlike many of our competitors, revenue and profit generating. So that's quite an asset. We hold the IP of the TMT Pro pipeline, and we also manufacture that. And this is then being transferred to Thermo Scientific, who are distributing it in the market. We are very happy about this partnership. There is really strong muscle to help us commercialize these products. And we see, and it's exemplified really to the market, that this product range is a major revenue generator for the group. It's a high margin revenue from these compounds, and there is a long patent coverage currently running through until the mid-2030s. And obviously, as we continue to work on our pipeline and also generate new compounds, new reagents, we are constantly increasing the patent lifetime and enlarging it. So as mentioned before, our methods match or even exceed the performance of others with regard to proteome coverage. So with our proteomics methods, we can really look very deeply into the proteome, and particularly the protein variants that I've mentioned before. And this is not necessarily possible with other proteomic methods. And the bioinformatics services deliver the insights that are so important for our customers' research projects, so they can really make sense of their data and also draw the right conclusions, hopefully, for their drug development programs going forward. I've mentioned single-cell proteomics before. This is a service that we are currently setting up, and we expect to launch this later in this year. And we expect also to be one of the first service providers to offer this to the market. And coming back to the new techs, our chemistry group continues to innovate here and produce and find new compounds, new targets, new techs. And we are working here on two areas on the portfolio of isobaric techs. So isobaric techs are basically enlarging the family of the TMT Pro reagents, and also isotopic mass techs. This is a different family and it's a completely new area where we see new application areas on the horizon. The strategic positioning is that we have continued with our organic growth strategy, as we have done the year before. That's where we basically started full steam our organic growth strategy. We have continued last year, 2022. We concentrated on high demand services like single-cell proteomics, and also increasing our unique selling point of proprietary techs by these innovative new reagents. And obviously also looking just internally, we are constantly optimizing our internal work processes so that we have the potential to optimize our margins through all processes. There is a substantial commercial opportunity from single-cell proteomics, and maybe just 2 words to explain what it is. I mean, the term single-cell proteomics basically already tells you what this method does. When we apply our usual proteomics methods outside of single-cell proteomics, for example, take a sample of cancer tissue that customers send us, then you look at the proteome basically across the sample, and such a tissue sample consists obviously of quite a number of different cell types, be it immune cells, be it the cancer cells itself, be it connective tissue or blood cells. So you get really kind of mixed answer. But if you are particularly interested, for example, in what is the proteome of just the cancer cells or just the immune cells, then you need much more targeted methods, and single-cell proteomics has been basically developed to provide that answer. And as I said, we are currently setting it up with an automated sample preparation and combined with TMT Pro, so that we not only can provide this in-depth answer, but also deliver high throughput analysis. Our new reagents projects, isobaric and isotopic, as I've mentioned, have developed well. We have also started this last year, and by basically communicating with the market, we are seeing high interest, so that we hope that we can also generate quite good, quite good revenue situation there in the future. We have achieved solid growth across our business. There was quite a number of strategic investments last year, and I will come to those. It's basically around increasing and improving our resources. We also see a strong order book, and our cash position has also improved last year. So we see that our strategic plans really turn into a basis or provide a basis for further growth of the business in this year, 2023. And also the whole board is very confident that our revenue and EBITDA growth are strong drivers for this year, even if we adjust for the milestone payment received last year from Thermo Scientific. So USPs, yes, USPs are kind of the secret sauce of a business. And what is this in our case? Well, we are really focused on delivering value for our clients. And the bullet points on this slide describe what it is. First and foremost, the unbiased detection of known but also unknown proteins. This is a key advantage against our competitors because many or the majority of our competitors really work with biased methods. So they can only look for proteins that are basically known, to make it very simple, whereas our methods are unbiased. So we really look what is around and then can explain which proteins, which biomarkers are really shown as the leading biomarkers in a certain subgroup of patients. We provide high-resolution mass spectrometry, so that is one part also of this unbiased detection, and it provides the possibility to really identify and detect these new and novel protein biomarkers, also with regard to any modifications that are around. So many methods are just not able to really show these modified forms. That translates into a greater depth and precision of protein detection. And we are also using multiple platforms for the targeted protein measurement. So our clients really get a very broad and very detailed answer. Last but not least, we are working according to ISO and GCLP standards. So the quality standards of our work are very high, and we have regular checks of these by independent bodies. And all in all, this enables a more focused and targeted drug development and better decision-making on our client side. So in summary, I will now just describe where we are operationally and commercially, and then the last couple of slides will tell you the summary of our financial situation. So operationally and commercially, we have done further strategic investments into our workforce last year. So we added 6 full-time equivalents and also a couple of instruments, mainly the new instrumentation for single-cell proteomics. We have made investments into new reagents. Obviously, these are expected to be very important future value drivers for our tech business. As I mentioned, there is high interest in the market, and this is really an integral part of innovation in this area. So we are expanding our portfolio of isobaric and isotopic mass specs. This serves the purpose to support the life cycle management of TMT Pro. As I said before, there is a patent lifetime until the mid-2030s. So hopefully you will be able here to extend this through this new compounds, but also to open a new market on the isotopic front, which completely new compounds to serve new application areas. The single-cell product launch will be later this year, and we remain confident that this will be one of the first offerings in high-performance single-cell proteomic services in the market. And looking on the commercial side, we see mainly happy clients. Multiple clients are reordering services, and just under 1/4 of these orders were from new clients. So there is a high rate of clients coming back. And we, as every year, we carried again over a significant amount, 1.1 million in service orders into this year. Also last year, we reported a major contract win from a leading US academic group. So that was one of the really bigger orders, and we see that our order situation this year develops very nicely and promising. The TMT Pro revenues remain strong, and we reached a sales milestone that we also reported to the market, underlying the importance of these products for Thermo Scientific. So it's not only a very potent partner to commercialize TMT Pro, but we also see that they are very successful. So, and we, on the other hand, looking at the service revenues, we grew the service revenues quite remarkably, percentage-wise. And this is despite the fact that in Germany, during 2022, there was still a high number of absence days in Frankfurt due to the quarantine regulations that were still in place for a large part of the year. So despite this fact, service revenues grew really remarkably. And last but not least, we don't see an impact on our revenues from the Russia-Ukraine war and its global impact on supply chains and so on and so forth. However, obviously, we also feel the cost increases that are apparent everywhere. So with this, I would like to hand over to Abdel Omari, our CFO, and he will give you a summary on the financial side. Over to you, Abdel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariola. Good morning, everyone. My name is Abdel Omari. I'm the company CFO, and I'd like to give you an overview of the key financials for the year 2022. Let's start with total revenues, which went up 52% to 7.78 million, as compared to 5.13 million in the previous year. If we break it down and look at the two parts of the business, then we see that biomarker service revenues went up 45% to 2.75 million, as compared to 1.9 million the previous year. TMT sales, royalties, and milestones went up 56% to 5.03 million, as compared to 3.23 million in the previous year, which includes a sales milestone that Mariola just mentioned of 0.87 million. If we adjust for this milestone, then underlying growth in TMT revenues was approximately 29%. Total costs went up to 28% to 6.05 million, as compared to 4.72 million in the previous year. And that's mainly due to investment in workforce and instruments. Now, looking at profitability, adjusted EBITDA went up 79% to 2.43 million, as compared to 1.35 million in the previous year. And also profit after tax has grown nicely to now 1.33 million, as compared to 0.07 million in the previous year. Also, cash position has developed nicely. We are showing a cash position of 3.99 million at the end of the year, compared to 2.39 million in the previous year. Now, having a look at the longer-term development of the business, what you see here is how TMT revenues and biomarker service revenues have developed in the last 5 years. And we see also longer-term a nice growth in both parts of the business. TMT is coming from 2.2 million in 2018 to now 5 million, which is a compounded annual growth of 23%, and biomarker service revenues coming from 750,000 in 2018 to now 2.75 million in 2022, which is a compounded annual growth of 38%. And here you see the long-term development of total revenue, which is coming from 3 million to 7.8 million, which is a compounded annual growth of 27%. And then this translates also on the profitability side, where you see that also EBITDA is growing nicely in line with the growing revenues. I think this concludes the presentation, and with this, I'd like to hand back to Alessandro to open the floor for questions. Thank you.
Dr. Mariola and Abdul, thank you very much for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just by using the Q&A tab, which is situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. But just while the company take a few moments to review those questions submitted today, I'd like to remind you that the recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. As you can see, we received a number of questions throughout today's presentation. And Ian, if I could just hand over to you to read out the questions where it's appropriate to do so, I'll then pick up from you at the end.
Super, thanks very much. So we do have a few questions pre-submitted and a couple more coming in as we go. So we'll start with the pre-submitted questions. The first of which is, how are the plans for internationalization going? Do you plan to release your SCP Sys1 workflow offering before internationalization can happen? So Mariola, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, thanks very much, Ian. We are basically working on both topics, obviously, as I've explained in parallel, both the internationalization as well as setting up SCP, and both are an integral part of our strategy. Setting up a robust single cell service is time consuming and challenging, of course, and we will launch once we are satisfied with the results, which we hope to achieve later this year, are quite sure. We of course would like to stress that there is no direct link requiring launch of single cell proteomics to proceed internationalization activities or vice versa. So it's independent things that are continuing in parallel and will be communicated once, well, materialized or more mature.
Excellent, thanks, Mariola. The next question, in fact, we had two questions very similar, asking where do we see the most value in the business, the reagents, service offerings, or the patented biomarkers, or which combination, I guess, of those three things. So again, Mario, if you want to start with that.
Yes, thank you. Well, the reagents are still the bigger value drivers in terms of absolute revenues, while the service business shows very attractive growth rates. So both very important, and you cannot say one is more important than the other. As the remaining patent life regarding to our different biomarkers is shortening, we would expect them to have decreasing importance to our long-term revenues. However, we still expect some revenues from the stroke portfolio.
Absolutely, thanks, Mariola. And just sort of reinforcing the point about the reagents and the services, there is undoubtedly a sustained and now, I believe, sustainable increase in the level of activity around proteomics, both in academia and in drug development programs with pharmaceutical and biotechnology companies who are in the main looking to outsource the more complex sorts of workflows that we specialize in. And I think they're being driven along the wave by the increased capacity that TMT Pro 18-plex has delivered. So more people are starting to use TMT because it's now offering the level of multiplexing that they need. And I think we'll see that trend continue for several years as we continue to work with the community, with our chemists and with Thermo to make sure that we're offering the right level of multiplexing. So there'll be substantial value in both those aspects of our business going forwards. And you never know with the biomarkers. We still have some IP with good lengths running for biomarkers in, say, the neurodegenerative space that are starting to pick up a bit more interest in the academic community reporting similar results to what we've seen. So that's certainly something that's going to still be on our radar, but we're putting most effort in developing the services at the moment. Okay, moving on. The next question, do you think PROTEOME will be trading as an independent company in 3 years' time? Or will it be acquired by a larger global player? So I guess the question here is more about how do we foresee our future over the next few years, and what are we doing to sort of achieve those goals? And Mariola, you can talk to that.
Yes, thank you, Ian. Yeah, as stated previously, we are currently focused on building value through organic growth, but obviously we are and have to be open to strategic opportunities as they arise. So obviously we are talking to the market and always checking opportunities that bring a win-win situation for well, at least 2, if not more parties. So whether in the future, whether it's 3 years or longer, it is possible that we might enter into cooperation to increase, for example, critical mass is nothing that we can answer with certainty at this stage, but I would say it's a possibility, of course. Such cooperations could be dedicated, for example, to certain business areas. There might be mutual interests in the reagent area or in the service area, so that to some kind we team up with a party. It could also be with regard to certain regions that we join forces or might join forces, also to new business considerations, so that 2 parties, join forces to set up some new aspects of our businesses, and obviously also corporate considerations. However, our focus right now is to grow all parts of the business and increase both revenues and profitability.
Thanks, Mariola. Okay, next question submitted during this call. Can you please provide more detail on the ordering process? For example, what's typical size and duration of a project, and the customer concentration in relation to total revenue? So I guess that means how many projects do we do to get the revenues we're running? Maybe Richard, you can step into that one.
Yes, thank you, Ian. I think it's fair to say that when we bring on a new client, they will do a relatively small project for us for a few tens of thousands of pounds to see how we operate and what sort of data that we can achieve through that project. And then it might grow into looking at more clinical samples where they want to validate that their drug is working. And then further on, we would be using our GCLP type services to help them in sort of advanced clinical trials for phase 2 and phase 3. So obviously those later projects will get larger value because there'll be more samples that are submitted at that particular time. As we announced last year for that leading academic group, that was some hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of business. That's probably more exceptional than the orders that will come in at the 20 to 50,000 pounds. But as I said, more companies will try us out first of all and do an evaluation with us, and that will lead to larger projects in the future. And as Mariola has already described, we do have a high retention of current customers, and in those situations, we do see continual business and increased value of each order that comes through.
Thanks, Richard. And I think it's also important to say that this increased level of activity around proteomics is also reflected in higher project volumes. So in terms of individual projects, we're generally seeing larger sample numbers in each of those projects. And I think that's a trend that will continue as well. Talking of trends, the next question relates to how stable our turnover, EBITDA and profit growth trends will be over the next 5 years, and supplemental of that, what do we see as the 3 key drivers of sustaining that growth? And Mariola, maybe you can start with that.
Okay. Well, I think Abdel is much more versed to give an answer here.
Yes, happy to do that. Thank you, Maria. Yeah, I mean, we are in a growing market. I mean, both parts of the business are growing. We think that, you know, this growth will continue. I mean, the market, proteomics market, is forecasted to continue to grow nicely, and we want to grow in line with that. I mean, the three key drivers are the ones that we've mentioned also in the presentation. We are working on new developments. Mariola mentioned single-cell proteomics and also new reagents that we are developing. And then also we've mentioned internationalization, which, you know, is also on our radar to further grow the business. Thank you.
Thanks, Abdul. And yeah, again, it's this trend of higher levels of activity in proteomics as a whole. The development of new reagents is absolutely critical to maintaining a strong revenue line for us, and we do have an excellent track record of doing that through the original TMT 6-plex into 11, then 16, then 18, and we'll continue to develop that portfolio as part of the key drivers. And I think introducing attractive new workflows like single cell, but there are other things we can do to address certain demands in the pharmaceutical industry that are perhaps a bit more technically challenging than they can deliver for themselves. And then sort of widening the attractiveness of things like single cell will certainly be key to increasing that growth. Okay, so moving on to the next question, which says, looking at current year revenues, is it correct to exclude any further milestone payments this year? And I think I can happily address that by saying that it is correct to assume that there won't be any significant milestone payments this year from the existing TMT business. I don't know, Abdul and Mariola, if you want to add anything else to that.
Nothing to add, Ian. For the short term, I mean, there's further milestones coming down the line, but not in the short term, not this year.
Yeah,
yeah,
correct.
Yeah, I think the trend has been every sort of 3 years or so has been the cadence in the past. Okay, can you please outline the CapEx and R&D needs of the business over the next few years? So from an operational perspective, the mass spectrometers have a functional lifetime. It's actually quite a long functional lifetime, but we continue to review where we are in the competitive nature of the platforms that we use. We have invested in both mass spectrometry and single cell platforms over the last couple of years, and we'll continue to look at that. The actual quantum of the capex is not something that we would sort of disclose publicly. And as we move forwards, building new workflows, developing new tags, and so on, of course, there is an R&D expense associated with that, but they're not significant costs in terms of our overall budget. I don't know, Abdul, if you want to speak any more to that.
Yeah, just a few comments. I mean, CapEx, if you look at the numbers we've reported, cash flow for investments was 0.3 million. So that can give you an idea of, you know, how this could look like this year. But longer term, then with growing cash position and growing available cash flow, then we have multiple opportunities to invest into further growth. Then we can also adjust to that and invest more into the growth of the business.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. That you know, as the revenue streams continue to strengthen, that gives us more flexibility as well.
Yeah.
Okay, on to the next question. Barring any unseen disruptions, is the sales growth for the current year expected to be the same percentage increase as 2022? Abdul, maybe Richard can both comment on that.
Yeah, so I mean, what we have said is we would like to grow revenue and EBITDA for this year, and that's adjusted for the milestone that we received last year. That's the guidance that we gave to the market. And as of today, we are well on track to deliver that. But we have not given a percentage. I mean, I've showed you in the presentation the percentages that revenue grew year over year, but also longer term. And we'd like to, keep that trend, but we have not guided a specific percentage for this year.
And I think, Abdul, I'd also add that the proteomics market is continuing to grow. There are various research papers that are out which compare what is spent globally in both academic and pharmaceutical R&D in the proteome compared to the genome. And those are all looking very positive for proteomics. So, the overall growth is continuing. As I said, we're bringing new customers on board. We would expect to have an ongoing positive effect on our sales as well.
Thanks, everybody. Very good. Right, next we have one of 5 questions that all address the same topic pretty much, which are do we have any plans to address the loans, and where do we think the loan situation is going to be in 2 years' time? So Mariola, Abdul, I think this is very much in your domain.
Abdul, you want to start?
Yes, happy to do so. The loans, yes, I mean, clearly it's something that we're looking at. As we have reported in our financial results, the loan from Valpes Investment, that's 0.8 million, including accrued interest at the end of 2022. That one is due end of June this year, so in due course. And that's the natural one to start with and pay this down. And then beyond that, we have not decided anything with, increasing cash position. Clearly, we are looking at where are we deploying the cash, investing into the business, or reducing the debt. It's something we're discussing, but nothing decided yet, and I can't give a guidance how this is going to develop over the next years, but it's clearly something where we think that with an increased cash position and cash flows coming in, we should be able to start to tackle that.
Thank you. And in one of the questions around the loans, there was also a comment about the effect of the loans on the share price and its continual suppression of any response to the good work that's being done. I don't know, Mariola or Abdul, if there's really a comment that could be made to that other than acknowledging it, but if you'd like to address that, please do so.
Yes, correct. It's obviously we see this phenomenon, if you will, and as Abdul has clearly explained, we are addressing it with first steps this year, and there is this weighing of arguments, and you can only spend money once most of the times. So either pay back and give a new basis for the improvement of the share price just by taking away that pressure, or rather investing into the future of the company by investing into further growth, instrumentation, internationalization, new resources, etc., etc. Obviously, you cannot just do one or the other, but the right split really between these activities needs to be made, and that is a constant task that the board is working on. But Abdul, maybe you have more comments on that.
Yeah, just briefly, I think you're right, Mariola, and I think we see a good development of the business, of all parts of the business. That's where our focus is. We have to continue to do that, and then we'll be able to generate cash flows, and that will enable us also to then, bring down the debt.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And while we're on sort of future looking, another question came in asking if there were any analyst forecasts in the market or any plans to have some produced. I guess, Abdul, that falls very much in your sphere.
Yes, so as of today, we don't have analysts covering us and publishing forecasts, but it's something that we have on our agenda. So we are engaging with the capital market and building the relationship with analysts, and we'll have to see when this will be fruitful and we'll have analyst reports out there. But it's clearly something that we're working on.
Thank you. Now, just to move things completely away from finance for a moment, a question saying, will AI have an impact on the business, and particularly in the context of what competitors are doing? So I'll step into that one. So AI is a very sort of complex space. You've probably all seen all this excitement over ChatGPT and the ability to have the internet write anything you like. But in terms of what's useful for the analysis of proteomics data and putting that in the context of other things like genomics data, medical health records, and so on, there is definitely a role for intelligent systems, whether they're true artificial intelligence or whether they're more supervised machine learning tools or unsupervised machine learning tools. That just depends which side of the spectrum you're looking from. We do use machine learning in our algorithms. We believe that the algorithms we've developed in-house do the job better than anything we could access externally. And we believe that gives our data analysis an edge over competition. But we're certainly aware of that, and we, from time to time, review whether we need to engage with external experts more in the academic space to see if there are things that we can bring in from the AI world. But so far, the tools that we have are not true AI, but they are sophisticated machine learning tools. And as I say, we're pretty comfortable with what they deliver for us. Okay, so let's move on. Lots more questions about the loans, which we've addressed. Another question, what are the cost pressures like at the moment, and are we able to increase prices accordingly? So Richard, maybe you can talk about the pricing strategy. I'll just start by saying, like every other business, we have cost pressures, both from infrastructure and utilities costs, but also input materials and consumables certainly have increased in price over the last few years. And Richard, in terms of our pricing, I think we're managing that process appropriately.
Yes, thank you, Ian. And the answer is yes, we are managing that process. We've, as you say, we've experienced numerous price rises from our suppliers, from big organizations down to small ones, both in Europe and in the US. And so unfortunately, some of those price rises have to be put into our services, and we review it constantly. And we address our pricing as we need to, and we will continue to do so.
Yeah, and I think our customers are certainly aware of the cost pressures, and they're not surprised at increased pricing, and it's not causing any issues for us. Okay, the penultimate question today is around single cell and asking whether we can comment on the commercial pricing dynamics and how it compares to the existing product portfolio. It's not something that we'll advertise on calls such as this. I would say that our pricing expectations for single cell suggest it will be a workflow that's got a very good revenue generation potential and decent margins, which will help add substantially to both our overall revenue and profit. But Richard, do you want to say anything more specifically about the dynamics of selling SCP?
Yes, thanks, Ian. I would also confer that we don't really want to address pricing strategy on a call such as this. We don't know what competitors might well be listening as well. I'm sure the investors would appreciate that. But I do think single cell is a very interesting area for us commercially. There are, of course, many biopharma companies who aren't using our services at the moment and may well be interested in looking at proteome sciences from a single cell perspective. And of course, once we have a commercial hold in that particular area, it will enable us not only to achieve revenue through that, but also to sell our normal services to them as well, such as looking at the proteome or the phosphoproteome. So I do see this as a double-edged sword for us, bringing on new customers and also being able to sell our existing services to them as well.
Yep, thanks, Richard. Very good. So the final question, and there will be one comment after that, is could you please comment on Galaxy CCRO clinical trial timelines? We cannot. That's not for us to comment on. Obviously, that's for Galaxy to comment on. We do have regular update calls with them. We're familiar with what they're doing, but it will be for them to address as and when they're ready to make any public statements about that. In the fullness of time, I think we've had a good run through here. If you have any more questions, you can still submit them for another minute or two, and we'll address those after the event. And those questions and answers will be available on our website in due course. But one comment that's come in, going back to the loan situation, is do we want to keep the loan in place to avoid any possible hostile takeover bids? I leave that as just an interesting comment. It's not necessarily something we thought of as a strategy. Mario, I don't know if you have any comment on that, but I felt that was a good place for us to end the call today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Interesting thought, whether this is an effective poison pill or not in such a situation. Well, I think you are right, Ian. We should let it stand there. I would have my doubts, but there are certain, that would be a longer discussion, really.
Absolutely. So yes, back over to the organisers. And thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and thank you for addressing all of those questions. As mentioned, the company will review the questions submitted today and will publish those responses on the Investor Meet Company platform. But just before redirecting investors to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to all at the company, Dr. Mariola, could I just ask you for a few closing comments?
Yes, thank you very much. So thank you all for your participation in today's meeting. Your interest is really very much appreciated. We are really very happy to have received so many questions. So that allows really some interaction with the investor and shareholder community. And we definitely look forward to keeping you informed in the near future. So all the best and goodbye.
Thanks once again for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of PROTEOME Sciences PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good morning to you all.